I think it's nonsense. The body inflames and there is no such thing as bad inflammation. It's trying to do what it's trying to do, and it's trying to protect you. It's trying to help you, and you have to find the root cause of it. You do not want to be shutting down these inflammatory pathways, and that's what they're doing. And it's that's all they can do. That's all they've been told to do because they are, legalized drug pushers, basically.
Welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. I'm your host, Lee Brandon. This work started for me several decades ago when I started to see the impact I could make on people, helping them to identify the root cause of their health problems that no doctor could figure out, including serious back, knee, shoulder and neck injuries, acne and eczema issues, severe gut health problems, even helping couples get pregnant after several IVF treatments had failed. And it really moves me to be able to help people in this way. And that is why I do what I do and why we have this show. Welcome back to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Today, I'm joined by Phil Escott, author of Arthritis, the best thing that ever happened to me. Phil's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. Once crippled by psoriatic arthritis, he endured years of pain and frustration trying to find answers through conventional medicine and various dietary approaches, including vegetarianism and veganism, which only made his condition worse. But Phil discovered a path to healing through a radical shift in his diet to purely grass-fed red meats, transforming his health and life in the process. In this episode, we delve deep into what psoriatic arthritis is, the challenges Phil faced on his journey, and the surprising role diet plays in managing his autoimmune condition. We also uncover some subtle but significant factors that contribute to chronic illness, including unresolved emotions, trauma, and even environmental influences like EMF pollution. Get ready for an eye-opening conversation that challenges conventional thinking and offers hope for anyone struggling with chronic health issues. Phil Escott, welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, Lee, thank you so much. Amazing we got here with the technical chaos.
Yes.
But I'm very honoured to be invited. Thank you.
Yeah, we got there, and I'm really looking forward to this. So today, Phil, the subject I really want to talk about is one that's close to my own heart. As you know, I have several family members who either suffer from or used to suffer from psoriatic arthritis, and I've seen the suffering at close quarters and all the awful interventions by their medical doctors. And as you probably know, Phil, trying to help family members, is difficult and frustrating at the best of times. So what I'd like to really kind of start with is if you could share your story that you describe so brilliantly in your fantastic book, Arthritis, the best thing that ever happened to me, which those of you listening, I'm holding it up right now. Definitely recommend. I think a couple of my family members have already purchased the book since I've told them about it. But could you begin by perhaps giving the listeners an overview of your background, including things like when you were a gym owner, your drumming, being a yogi? So basically building up to the time when all your kind of major health problems started.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been very interested in health and, lifestyle, that kind of thing since about, I don't know, probably 1980 or so when I was 18 years old. And I had a big interest more in the sort of spiritual side of things after that, after sort of enormous amounts of psilocybin mushrooms, and decided that probably wasn't the way to go. So I ended up getting really into the yogi side and the transcendental meditation, that kind of thing, and ended up joining that movement. And that kind of got me into the whole business of vegetarianism, which is so predominant in these spiritual communities. And I was playing drums as well. I've always been a drummer. And so for many years, I moved up here in 1986. And for many years, I just ate vegetarian food and did yoga and meditated and did their comedy flying business, the flying sutra, where, people sit in lotus and bounce around on foam mattresses and think it's going to bring around world peace. But that kind of conned me for a while. And so then I did. I suppose it was like late 80s, early 90s. I decided to get into more training and stuff, and started going to gyms and this and that, and owned my own gym from, I think, 1997 till 1999, when I went off to India for some extended travels and let that gym go. And then I think in the 2000s, I wasn't really training, and I was losing interest in that kind of spirituality as well. But I'm eating some rubbish, although it was largely plant-based.
Mm.
And then in 2010, ended up with really crippled with psoriatic arthritis. I should have seen the signs for probably decades before. Never mind years before, but they were coming up for ages. And I was in real mess. I couldn't move. My back, my neck, particularly my ankles were blown up. One knee, my wrist that had been kicking off a bit since since early 90s, that went mad as well. And I was in a terrible mess. I could hardly get up off the sofa. Life was hell. And I already, leading up to it, I'd seen that I'd had calcifications in arteries. I had fatty liver and cysts on the liver. I had kidney issues, all sorts of things. And so, I looked into all the research that you've seen that I went into in the book. And it was a real difficult time, because I had to try and get out of the brainwashing of the plant-based stuff. And thought, right, I'll go even more plant-based. And so I ended up, not veggie, but vegan, and then raw vegan and juicing, and oh God, and all that did was de-enamel my teeth and take all my muscle away and leave me with kidney stones from all the oxalates from the spinach smoothies. So, and it didn't do anything really for the joints.
Yeah.
But then around 2013, after looking into stuff like Jack Kruse and Natasha Campbell-McBride's GAPS diet and things like that, I twigged that, we should be eating a load of fatty meat. But I still thought that it was important to eat your healthy veg with them. Yeah. And it wasn't until after I'd written that book, actually, 2015, that I went fully carnivore and reaped the benefits thereof.
Interesting.
It seems mad to a lot of people, but wow, most of us come to Carnivory out of desperation. But, the truth is, it is unbelievably healing.
Yeah, I just want to take you back a little bit before we dive a bit deeper into that. What motivated you to open the gym?
I just got a craving for being muscly, but my my motivation, really, to tell you the truth, was that there was a nice upstairs that wasn't being used that we could put a recording studio in. And so I thought, it'll be great. I'll just muck around downstairs. The gym will run itself. And, the band I was in at the time, called the Acrobats of Sa, amazing band, actually, very, very cool. I thought, we can have our own private studio. We can have that upstairs. Of course, it doesn't work out like that. I was very naive. The gym took a lot of running, a lot of training people. And it messed up, both my ambitions as a musician and the band itself. But the studio is still running under the name of the guitarist, under the, heading of the guitarist, Mark Wainwright, and it's Alien Sound Studios up here, and it's doing very well, and he's absolutely brilliant. So, something great came out of it. But, it didn't work as trying to do both of the things at once at all.
So up until the point where you opened the gym, was like your main source of income playing in the band?
No, I never really earned anything from that band, because we had such expensive equipment. We always insisted on having roadies when we couldn't afford them. And so I don't think I ever really earned anything until I ended up going out and playing my first blues cover, and somebody put 50 quid in my hand, and I thought, my God, do people actually get paid for doing music? No, I mean, my income up till then was all sorts of bizarre things. I was a gemstone dealer for sort of rushing gems in between, and a very good friend of mine she's a great gemstone dealer down in Hatton Garden, and rushing gems between them and the TM movement when they got the Jyotish stuff going, and they were selling gems to people, actually very low quality ones. I was getting some great ones for them. And sold Oriental carpets, I've done all sorts of weird things, all sorts of weird things to try and fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
All I've done is avoided a job.
Right. Gotcha. So just for the audience, when you say TM, you mean transcendental meditation?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when, because you live in Lancashire now, right?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. When did you move up there?
It was 1986.
Okay.
So I grew up down south in, Berkshire and Surrey, and went to all these awful boarding schools, and rebelled against that and moved up to the frozen north. And for 6 months or so, I thought I'll just move up there, check it out, and here I still am. Years and years and years later.
Yeah, because I just so you know, I actually visit Lancashire a few times a year. So I actually teach courses in Eccleston.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I know.
Which is not a million miles from where you live, right?
Not a million miles at all, no.
Yeah. I think I even turn off the same junction at the M6 to go there than if I was to go to yours, I think, if like that would be right.
Yeah, quite possibly, I'd say, yeah.
Interesting. So you mentioned a few of the health challenges that you had. If we could maybe go into a bit more detail, can you remember the first time you thought, damn, this is something a bit serious, I need to go and see a doctor? And what was the result of that doctor's visit? I first met Amelia at a health club where I was hosting an event offering back screenings to the members. The first thing I noticed about Amelia was a dullness in her eyes, which I later realized was due to extreme pain, and I noticed that she was unable to turn her head and had to turn her whole body if she wanted to look in a different direction. Amelia informed me that she had a history of repeated shoulder and neck pain for the last 2 years and was diagnosed with spinal stenosis at C4-5, C5-6, and C6-7, and a stenosis is a blockage which in Amelia's case was in the spinal canal of her neck, irritating her spinal cord. She had extreme tenderness over her neck and trapezius muscles on both sides, and she suffered from severe neck pain continuously. Amelia informed me that she'd been advised that spinal surgery was the only option, but the surgery came with great risks, including potential paralysis, and no guarantee of success, which made Amelia fearful of the surgery. In addition to this, Amelia suffered from continuous exhaustion, painful intestinal gas and bloating, even though she felt she was following a healthy diet. After a thorough evaluation, I designed Amelia a corrective exercise, nutrition, and lifestyle plan, plus I referred her to a Nuka chiropractor for specific adjustments to her neck. After following the plan religiously, Amelia is much stronger and much more flexible than she's ever been before, and no longer suffers from repeated neck pain and has full range of motion in her neck. Amelia also reported that her energy was maximized and that she no longer suffers from the gripping stomach pains that had dominated her life for a very long time. If you're suffering like Amelia was and you'd like to find out more about getting to the root cause of your pain, go to www.bodycheck.co.uk, that's bodychek.co.uk, to request your consultation.
Yeah. It was when one ankle blew up so I could hardly even walk on it. And that was the first of the really bad joints. It was red and it was inflamed and it was huge. And I thought maybe it's an old climbing wall injury. I fell off a climbing wall years ago and damaged that ankle. And I thought, yeah, it's probably that. No, it wasn't. And where did I go? I can't remember where I went first. But I mean, GP visits are pretty useless. But I got referred to a rheumatologist, and that was just ridiculous. I mean, he said, well, that's it. Yes, you've got arthritis. It might be reactive arthritis, but all arthritis is reactive arthritis, right? It's reacting to something. But their definition of that is something that you've done recently that has caused it. They got some funny ideas about what goes on. They have no idea what autoimmunity is. And he sort of sat me down and told me I was going to need pills forever and drained a load of fluid off my knee. And and he just said it was hopeless, really. And so you come out of there extremely depressed. But I was but I've always been into the alternative stuff and never trusted the medical system really. So I always knew that I'd figure some way out. Never did I think that it would be just eating meat.
Yeah.
But he did put the fear of God at me, and I went home extremely depressed and wondering what to do. And for a month or so, I did take his medications, but all they did was turn my fingers yellow and give me sort of psychotic acid flashbacks and stuff. And I didn't think that there was any use in taking that, so I just stopped it and went on my own way. I thought, I've got a huge health puzzle now. I mean, the information is out there about the carnivore diet and huge amounts of success stories. So it's not so difficult for people now. But back then there wasn't so much info, and so it took a lot of digging and a lot of blowing up of old brainwashing.
Yeah, I just want to take you back again. So you're with the rheumatologist. And did he say that it was psoriatic arthritis?
No, not to start with, because they don't know what it is. They wait for blood tests and then they put some funny name on it. Yeah. So he said, basically, we've got to wait 6 months to see whether it's rheumatoid or psoriatic. Well, I didn't have rheumatoid factor, so it wasn't rheumatoid. But they didn't know. And after a few months, I ended up sacking him and getting a different rheumatologist because I thought maybe one might be better than another. And he seemed really sweet, really lovely. But as you can see from the book, there's some comedy episodes with that one. And they get very aggressive in the end if you don't just take their pills and shut up.
Yeah.
And so he did as well. And eventually he was the one who said it's psoriatic arthritis. But I'm not into these labels anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's nonsense. The body inflames and there is no such thing as bad inflammation. It's trying to do what it's trying to do. And it's trying to protect you. It's trying to help you. And you have to find the root cause of it. You do not want to be shutting down these inflammatory pathways.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. And it's that's all they can do. That's all they've been told to do because they are, legalized drug pushers, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's not the way to go around it.
Yeah. So you go to the first rheumatologist with your ankle that's swollen, which I'm guessing didn't do a lot for your drumming. They give you pills. Can you remember what they gave you initially?
Yeah, well, they tried to get me on methotrexate. Initially, They always give you steroids, which does work. I mean, yes, it gets you completely out of pain. It's amazing. Yeah. You think, wow, I'm cured. Yeah. But they know that they're too strong and they're a bargain with the devil, and you can't take them long term. And so they try and wean you off onto one of their other sort of drugs that blow up the liver, like methotrexate, which I always refuse to take. Yeah. So, methotrexate is vile stuff. Yeah. Well, it does a lot of damage and it often doesn't work anyway. But what they put me on was sulfasalazine. I agreed to try that out. And as I say, that just, had some side effects, and it did, well, they're effects. Let's not call them side effects. They are effects because it didn't even work on the joints anyway. So, horrible stuff. Absolute toxins. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my family members who had psoriatic arthritis was prescribed methotrexate. And when they told me, I said, you do know that that's a form of chemotherapy? And he's like, oh, is it? And I said, yes. And I said, have you looked at the side effects on the list? And he's like, no. Well, one of them is cancer, right? So anyway, cut a long story short, their arthritic pain went away, which meant that they could carry on working. But a few years down the line, guess what they got?
Yeah, very predictable.
Cancer, right? And so, what you've alluded to already, I'm sure we're going to talk about it more, but, so important, rather than just trying to mask the symptom and then cause another problem down the line, you've got to really get in there and get to the root cause, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a bit more in a while. So you saw the two rheumatologists. By the time you saw the second one, were your symptoms getting worse, or were they kind of the same? Or what stage was you at when you saw the second rheumatologist?
Well, they were calming down a bit, but I was still in my vegan days. And so that's not really going to fix anything. I mean, I'd lost a hell of a lot of weight. I'd lost about, I don't know, 75 pounds, something like that. Only losing the last of the fat when I eventually went keto. But during that time, during that veganism time, I just lost all my muscle as well. So I didn't look good at all. And so I mean, there were certain little encouraging signs because I wasn't eating a load of grains anymore. I'd given up some things, but this is the most dangerous thing about veganism, the honeymoon period, when it appears to be working, but it's basically a fast. And that's why it works sometimes temporarily for some people. And they say, oh, there's all these great healing stories on it. But to be honest, for every one it works for, even short term, there's hundreds that it doesn't work for. And so, I think I left myself seriously nutritionally depleted and didn't really have many benefits from it. So, there were some encouraging signs that it was to do with diet largely. And so that kept me going and kept me arguing with the rheumatologists. So, most people who go to rheumatologists, they just carry on eating bread and cereal and pasta and whatever. And so they don't notice any difference. I'd noticed a bit of a difference. And so I thought I was on the right track. I wasn't, but I had sort of figured out something. And at least I knew that when they said that it has nothing to do with diet, it was nonsense. Now, during that time, I did periodically get out of pain with extended fasts, which, of course, blew up my muscle even more. So I was doing regular 3 and 5 day fasts. I think one was 11. But these were water fasts. And really, I think water fasts, they're okay sometimes. But when you water fast, you do lose muscle. If I'd have known about dry fasting back then, I might have preserved some muscle, because when you fast and have no food and no water, it works a lot quicker. Like they say, 1 day dry fasting is equivalent to 3 days water fasting. But it also preserves muscle mass, because the body is looking more for hydration, where it gets from, blowing up cells that are not so useful. The body's very wise. It will blow up tumor cells. It will blow up cysts and excess fluid here and there. And the body is very wise. And so this is why dry fasting is such a powerful tool. But when you fast, either with water or dry fasting, inflammation dies right down. And so this is clear proof to me that it's something to do with the diet. Otherwise, it would just carry on if you didn't eat, right?
Yeah.
And so you tell the rheumatologist that, and you say, it's got to be something to do with diet. But I wasn't figuring it out, because every time I started eating again, it would come back, because I hadn't figured out what to eat yet. It wasn't destroying my gut.
Yeah.
So, when they say it's got nothing to do with diet, it's because all they've ever seen maybe is one person who gave up bread for a week or something, and that's not going to do much. So they say, oh, it's nothing to do with diet. No, it takes concentrated effort with exactly the right diet for weeks, if not months. And then you can hope to unwind the damage that you've done for decades. You can't switch it off in a day, however perfect you go.
Yeah. That's really interesting, because I don't know if you can see my latest book. So I suffered from acne for 18 years.
Right. Yeah, I've seen you've been been in that field. Yeah. Interesting.
And I can remember I was probably 13, 14. My mum took me to the GP again, because my acne wasn't getting any better. The doctor had thrown everything at me that they knew what to give me, and it was getting worse. It wasn't getting better, it was getting worse. And my mum just said, is there anything I'm feeding him that could be causing the acne? And the doctor said, oh, no. There's absolutely no link between acne and diet. And, that was 1982, 1983 kind of time. And it's interesting. If you go onto the NHS, that's the National Health Service website, and you look up acne, it will say in there, like, myth busting. It's a myth that there's any link between acne and diet. And it says there's no evidence to suggest that there's any link between acne and diet. Well, guess what I did? I went on PubMed and I searched for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and I found hundreds of papers linking diet to acne, right? And it's all over the NHS website. So there's absolutely no link. It's a myth. Don't believe anyone that tells you it's related. But then when you look at what doctors are trained in, they're trained in, physiology, pathology, pharmacology, right? There's no nutrition in there. So how would they even know? Right? They don't study nutrition. Like you said, they're just legalized drug pushers, right? It's to a degree, it's not their fault because they're kind of indoctrinated into the system in the medical training. But then a part of me thinks, well, actually, no, they should be responsible. And like we've done, we've gone out and done our own research. Doctors should do that as well. That's my view anyway.
Absolutely. But the ones who do, they end up talking exactly about the same things as we do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Ken Berry, Anthony Chaffee, Sean Baker, and many other docs now are speaking exactly what we're speaking about, and they got it from the same place. And the only docs that aren't speaking about it are ones that can't be bothered to research.
Yeah. Yeah. Or ones that are too scared to speak out. That's the other issue, right? Because if they speak out, we've seen what's happened to a lot of doctors in the last few years, right? They either they get hounded out, they get pushed out, or they end up leaving because they don't want to be part of that system. For telling the truth and trying to stick up for patients and patient safety, right? And we all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They lose their medical license or they give it back because they don't want to be part of that system. Or they don't want to go through the punishment of having to go through a kangaroo court, right? Which we know now exists, certainly in the UK. So yeah, it's interesting. So by the time you saw the second rheumatologist, things aren't getting much better. You've noticed that a few things in your diet are possibly causing the problem because you've cut those out. Things maybe got a little bit better. What was the next stage from there?
Well, the next stage, I think, really, I was on my own then. I did go back once, to try. An appointment came up, which I think I went on about in the book, but an appointment did come up. I didn't make one. You get these appointments that come up automatically. And I thought, oh, cool, I'll go back and show him how well I've done. And so I was the only one that was sort of jumping up and down in the waiting room. And I went in there and I said, check out what I've done. And he just said, well, no, it's all carrying on and it's going to get in your heart and lungs. And, then you'll get a tumor and you need to be on the methotrexate or you'll be in real trouble. And I said, look, I don't have this due to a deficiency in methotrexate, seriously. And I said, look, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to take anything. I just came back in to show you this. And he got so angry. He started shouting. He actually frothed at the mouth. And I told him that, frothing at the mouth can be a sign of heart disease, and left and never came back. And that was it. I'd had enough of them by then. I only went in there to show him that I was doing well. And I hadn't even got completely better, but I was a lot better than anyone in his waiting room,
Yeah.
And I think by that stage, I'd probably twigged that we needed a load of fatty meat and we were not vegetarian as a species. I think I found a website called something like beyondvegetarianism.com. And it was these two vegetarians who decided to do some research. One had gone back to meat, one hadn't, but realized that he should do. But he just could not get over his disgust of it. There's these funny sort of things that are put into our brain. But anyway, that led me down that path. And then I found Natasha Campbell-McBride and the GAPS diet. And I love Natasha. I think, she's been on my podcast and she's done a few Zoom meetings, a few Zoom appearances at the events that we organize, including the one we just did in Spain. I finally persuaded her next year she is actually turning up in Spain, but she's overdue for a massive hug by about 10 years. I love her. I've got to know a lot of these people in this space and I met them personally and they've been on my podcast, I've been on theirs, and they've come to do events, and speak at the events. And I know them very well, but I never got to meet Natasha yet. But she was really an initial inspiration. And I did read, I remember, reading in one of her things or hearing on a podcast that she had some people who were just eating meat and no veg at all, and they were doing beautifully. And I thought, wow, well, I don't need to go that far. I'll just carry on with the healthy veg because they can't be a problem. I hadn't twigged about plant toxins yet, which is a huge subject in which my friend Anthony, he's got that great video, hasn't he? That plants are trying to kill you. on YouTube. Please, everybody go and watch that. And Dr. Anthony Chaffee, Plants Are Trying to Kill You. It'll blow your mind. It's about an hour long. You won't believe what's in your broccoli and cauliflower, and particularly your Brussels sprouts. 136 known human carcinogens. Yeah, no wonder they taste so revolting. But anyway, I was still sort of roasting my healthy veg with my fatty meat. And I just noticed on the days where I didn't eat it, I felt a lot better. And so I just slid out of it. I couldn't be bothered to cook them anymore. And ended up kind of by my own choice, really, carnivore in 2015, or by what I went by how I felt. There wasn't so much info about it then. There's a hell of a lot now. A load of people speaking out about it, some great docs, and some great clinical results. Like another good friend of mine, Dr. Jafar Clements of Paleomedicina, their results on a really high-fat, fully carnivore diet, no dairy, definitely no dairy, they say. And their results are incredible. And that's really how I ended up on what they call a PKD, that Paleolithic ketogenic diet, which is just really high-fat carnivore, really, preferably ruminant animals only, a little bit of organ meats, that kind of thing, salt and water. And the results they're getting, even on horrific diagnoses like glioblastomas, like my friend Andrew Scarborough, and he was diagnosed with that like 11 years ago. That's like a 2-year, sort of a 2-3 month, and you're dead kind of diagnosis. And here he is, 11 years on, absolutely thriving. So, it's not just for arthritis and stuff. If you give the body what it needs and take away what it doesn't need, it has amazing healing processes. And like you say, the docs are educated to think that things are incurable so that these kind of truths don't come out. I don't want to put my tinfoil hat on too much, but I believe that the medical system, apart from trauma care and a couple of other things, is seriously evil.
Yeah.
And I think it's there to keep people ill and keep them buying that crap. It's very tied in with the processed food industry, isn't it? It all goes hand in hand. Let's keep them sick, keep them buying meds, keep them alive and pretty sick for as long as we can. And there we go. And then in America, where they don't have an NHS system, then bankrupt the whole family by stealing the money from the house and the inheritance, and for paying for the actual processes that killed them in the first place. Absolutely horrific. Horrific racket, genocidal racket.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do think emergency medical care is done very, very well, but chronic health, they just make it worse in my opinion. But just going back to plants, I have actually had Sally Norton on the show. So if anyone
I chatted to her on mine as well. She's great, isn't she?
Yeah,
very cool.
If anyone hasn't listened to my episode with Sally Norton, I would highly recommend you go and listen to that episode. It's called Toxic Superfoods, same name as her book, which again is great as well. And that's a real eye opener for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And, oxalates, which she focuses on the most of the plant toxins, is one of the very nastiest ones, and one that I fell foul of. And when I was chatting to her, I was, 2022, I ended up 2012, I had a kidney stone, had to have it lasered out. And then I thought, oh, well, that's done, I'm sorted. But what I didn't realize was that oxalates dumped for years. And I ended up with a kidney stone in 2022 in the summer. I passed it myself this time, thank God, but it was horrific pain. And I was talking to Sally about that, and I said, why would I have got one? I haven't had any oxalates for like 8 years. And she said, no, it can take even up to decades to dump these things out. Unfortunately, most people are not stone formers, so they won't get kidney stones, but you can get various issues, skin issues and styes in the eye and this and that, all sorts of symptoms when the oxalates start moving. And it's nasty. It's nasty. We are full of plant toxins from our healthy 5 a day.
Yeah. Another person I've had on the podcast is Jane Buxton, who wrote the book, The Great Plant-Based Con, which again is another fantastic book. So again, so well researched, so well written, and she's not necessarily telling anyone to go carnivore, but it's a really good read. And if you haven't listened, actually there was 2 episodes I did with her because the interview was so long, I had to split it into 2 parts. So yeah, if you haven't checked that out, I would definitely check that out. Just going back to your time How long did you have your psoriatic arthritis for in total? Attention, all radical health rebels. Are you ready to uncover the truth the authorities don't want you to know? We've just launched our Radical Health Rebel channel on Rumble. Here's the deal. We're bringing you the first half of our subscriber-only episodes for free. That's right, free access to the hard-hitting, eye-opening conversations that dig into the topics mainstream platforms won't touch. Whether it's cutting-edge health insights, exposing hidden agendas, or sharing tools to thrive in challenging times, this is your chance to stay informed without subscribing to the podcast. Tune in on Rumble to keep track of what's really going on in the world and join a growing community of truth seekers. Don't miss out. Search Radical Health Rebel on Rumble and start watching today. Because knowledge is power, and it's time to take yours back.
You know, there was joint issues going on from the mid-'80s. I just thought, oh, look, my hips and sacroiliac joint are a bit sore because I sit in Lotus and bounce around on the phone too much. No, but there was loads of other people who didn't get that. And then my wrist, maybe it's too much drumming. Maybe I have, they first diagnosed it as Kienbock's disease, which is an avascular necrosis of the lunate bone. So the lunate bone crumbles away. It wasn't that. But I'm glad they didn't diagnose it because probably back then in the early 90s, I would have taken their drugs. I wouldn't have had a clue what to do. So how long did I? It's hard to say. You see, this thing, once the body's learned how to do something like this, if you make mistakes, it can start doing it again. And so do I have it? The body remembers how to do it now. And so I've got to be very careful.
Yeah.
If I eat something wrong, and by something wrong, I don't mean plants. I mean, pork, chicken, dairy, or eggs. If I eat too much of that, I'll feel it. I mean, not as bad as I did back in 2011, 2012, as long as I lay off it. But I was worse in the winter of 2022. I went on Anthony Chaffee's channel and talked about that a lot because people sort of saying, oh, no, you shouldn't be on camera. You're looking so skinny. You're looking, I said, no, I've got to be honest. I want to be open about these things and help people to understand because, I played drums with the Daz band, this very rebellious band, and we play the freedom festivals and whatever. And I was eating dairy, chicken, pork, eggs. It's more easy to find that kind of thing on the road, right? When you're eating out. Whereas, fatty beef and lamb is very difficult to find. And I thought, I've been carnivore that long. This will be fine. I'm not eating any plants or anything. And it took a while. It wasn't like a week. It wasn't even a month, but it was, eating that consistently over the year. And by that autumn equinox, when often a load of symptoms come out. And, if there was a time, God forbid that anybody would want to fake a pandemic, but if they ever did, that would be the time to do it. When people get their natural detoxes. And there was a kidney stone happening. There was obviously an oxalate component, but it was also a very stressful year. There's a lot of other layers to health. Than just diet. Yeah. But it was a very stressful year. It was very difficult. And, by the winter I was crippled and I lost 45 pounds again that I need to lose. And, ended up at about 9 stone again at 5'10". That's not a nice place to be, but often during these healing phases, you do get very, very skinny. And then the weight just comes back up. I put about half of that back on again now, and I'm kind of happy where I am, but I'm very lean again now. But I need to do some training and put some muscle mass on because, in Spain, standing next to Anthony Chaffee, my God, I did look like a toothpick. And next year I've got Sean Baker coming as well. So I got to stand in between them and it's going to look ridiculous, like a thick doorstop sandwich with a stupid little thin bit of ham in it. I don't know where that analogy came from. But yeah, I need to get back to some training. But how long did I have it? I think it's always there as an echo.
Right.
But the thing is, this time when it happened, it taught me a lot in the winter of 2022. It was actually worse than it was before. It was horrific, but I had no doubts about the diet, 0 doubts. Whatever happened to me, whatever the blood showed, whatever was going on, I only had the bloods drawn to send them to Shofir at Paleomedicine. And the NHS immediately misinterpreted them and said, you've got cancer, which I knew I didn't have. And I said, well, I'm not going to take any of the treatments anyway. Even if I have, I know what to do about it. So yeah, I just went very high fat, lamb, beef. That was it again. Even at the beginning, I couldn't even handle a ribeye steak. That was agony as it went through the leaky gut that was obviously been trashed again. I had to even have, like bone broth with a load of fat floating in it. That was about all I could handle. And then I eased into it. Whereas it took me about 3 years probably to get out of it the first time round when I wrote the book. This time when I really knew what to do, it took about 3 months probably.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like, I guess if you call it your first period of suffering, let's call it, might not be a good word to use, but let's go with that. It was about maybe 15 years, let's say. So from mid 80s to around the year 2000, would that be right?
Well, mid 80s until about 2010, really.
Oh, 2010, sorry. So 25 years.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, most of that time, I wasn't in any pain. I mean, I was training hard. I was riding mountain bikes and writing for mountain bike mags. But I was always a little more achy afterwards than most people should be, that kind of thing, And I'd get a bad back all the time. And I was always going to the chiropractor or osteopath. I mean, I went to so many. I became friends with them and learned loads of techniques. So if somebody did their back in the gym, they were on the ground. I was crunching them out. I knew everything because it had been done on me so many times. And that wasn't the issue. I mean, I just don't get that anymore. I can't remember when I last went to a chiropractor. I don't need one anymore because, I didn't understand that mostly it's inflammation in the spine. It wasn't subluxations. It wasn't this. It wasn't that. It didn't need a crunch, probably. It just needed me to stop eating that crappy food. But those were the sort of echoes. It wasn't like I was in a wheelchair for 25 years or anything like that. It was, that's how it starts, though, with people, those little symptoms that everybody has, because you get used to, everybody gets aches and pains. No, you shouldn't do. Joints should last a whole lifetime, and our lifetime should be a lot longer than they are now. And, it's like when people say that these indigenous tribes, that people die young, they don't have time to get a chronic disease. Well, they don't die young. The average can be brought down sometimes by, infant mortality, lack of trauma care and whatever. But when these people get old, 80 plus, even 100 plus, they're in incredible health. And they eat mostly meat. There's a lot of other factors, the light, the grounding, all that kind of thing, fantastic lifestyle they have that we don't. But so it's there's a whole load of different factors to it. But you should not, if you're getting little aches and pains here and there, little digestive issues, this and that, skin eruptions, it's a sign that something's wrong. As I always say, listen to the whispers before they become shouts. And I didn't. I did, but I went down the wrong path with everything. The first book I ever wrote was in the mid 90s, and it was on, lowering your heart rate during cardio training and Ayurveda and all the different foods and all the doshas that they affected and in what way. I mean, I just needed to cut all the damn foods out that I was eating back then, not learn exactly how they messed you up. Crazy.
Yeah. So just for the listeners, can you explain what psoriatic arthritis actually is?
Well, yeah. What they say it is it's just a multiple manifestation of autoimmunity where you get skin issues. Now, I didn't get many skin issues, only a few rashes after the joints went. But basically, they say that any kind of arthritis, chronic arthritis, which doesn't have a rheumatoid factor, so they can label it rheumatoid, anything which has exactly the same symptoms, but doesn't have the rheumatoid factor, they call it psoriatic arthritis. It's a silly term, but any autoimmunity basically is the gut becomes leaky from the poisonous foods that we eat, particularly seed oils, grains, that kind of thing. Those are the real bad ones.
Yeah.
And that will create leaky gut, so that means that the tight junctions in the gut open up. So certain proteins are getting through in an undigested form into the bloodstream. Now, there's another theory that autoimmunity is due to molecular mimicry. So, the body goes and attacks tissues that have a similar molecular structure in part to the proteins that are getting through. I don't subscribe to that. It's a common theory, and at least it's better than your body is attacking itself for no reason. But I don't think it covers it. I think, when I had Natasha on my podcast, I asked her, what is autoimmunity? And the first 20 minutes were just genius. I've never heard it explained so well. But basically, she was saying, there is no such thing as bad inflammation. The body is trying to clear out toxins from a certain part of the body where they've lodged. Why do they lodge in a certain part of the body? Well, that's difficult to say. Why does somebody get it in one knee and not the other knee? Why do they get it in their ankle, not their elbow? I think you have to look into emotional issues for that. And you get certain energetic blocks, and that is huge in unwinding these things. But on a dietary level for now, the gut becomes leaky, the proteins get through, and the toxins, the plant toxins and whatever, they lodge here and there, and the body tries to get rid of them, which is why at the start of these things, it can go from one joint to another quite quickly. And then one clears up, another one does. And then one joint might get a bit damaged. You start to get some scar tissue in it, like my left knee. And then it's very difficult to clear it out of there. So I think it's very important for people to understand that they need to get rid of it while it's traveling around the body. People I've seen who are diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis who've come to me, and it's still at the very early stages, no joint damage, and they're not on meds. If they go really strict with everything, it reverses very quickly. It's wonderful to see, and they get left with no damage at all. They have to be strict, though, because people say, oh, well, carnivore doesn't cure anything. It just covers up the issue. Well, that's like saying in the same way that you smashed your foot with a hammer. And then, you can't smash your foot with a hammer anymore. So you're not cured. Just stop smashing your foot with a hammer, right? I mean, you take away the things that your body tried to protect you from for decades, and then finally gave up, and it couldn't. It got overloaded. So why would you want to go back to them? It makes no sense to me. So, oh yeah, it hasn't cured it because you can't go out and eat pizza and pasta all day, every day. Well, that's not human food. And my body protected me from that for 48 odd years before it really fell apart. So why would I want to go back? So I think that's ridiculous when they say it's not cured. I don't like the word cured. I just think that your body has been rebelling. It's got angry. It's told you in no uncertain terms that it's had enough. So listen to it. Don't wind it up again.
Yeah. 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 We call that the pain teacher. Right? Because, there's a lot of, I know you've studied a lot of the Eastern philosophies, and they very much go down that road, don't they? That pain is there to teach you something. And when you think of it at more of a kind of simple level, what is pain for? Pain is a signal. It's a message, right? If you step on something sharp, there's a signal from the nervous system in your foot to your brain to say, if you carry on moving forwards, that sharp object is going to go straight through your foot. So contract the muscles to lift your foot off of the sharp thing, right? Or if you put your hand on something hot, like say you're in a kitchen and you don't realize and there's a hot plate, you put your hand on it, there's going to be a signal from, the pain receptors on your hand to your brain very quickly to say your hand's on something very hot. That's going to create a muscular contraction of the muscles to lift your hand off so that you don't do it damage, right?
Yeah.
So at that level, you can see it's very simple that pain is a messenger. And some people would say that pain is a way that your subconscious mind makes your conscious mind aware of something, right? Because again, if you're stepping on something that you don't know is there, it's subconscious, right? If you don't know you're stepping on a pin, let's say, or a nail, you wouldn't step on it consciously, would you? So you're stepping on it subconsciously. Soon as you feel that sharp feeling in your foot, now you're conscious of it. Now you can potentially stop the damage, right? But then if you look at it a different way, so let's say psoriatic arthritis and your ankle or your knee or your wrist or whatever is swollen and painful, the question is, what is that pain trying to teach me? Right? And again, something I've mentioned a few times on the podcast, one of my favorite books is called The Gift of Pain. And it's about an English doctor. I think he's long gone, but he worked predominantly in leprosy colonies. Now, people with leprosy, they lose feeling, so they can't feel pain.
Yeah.
And there's one story that I've told many times. I'm going to say it again. He once visited a leprosy colony that he used to work at, and all the patients saw him arrive. So they all went running out to greet him because they were all excited to see him. And he said he was looking at one boy running, and he said all of a sudden his gait changed and he was running really awkwardly. And he thought, that's strange. What's going on there? And when he looked, this boy's foot had completely dislocated and he was running on his tibia.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Right. So the foot had gone completely and he's running on his tibia. And he didn't stop running because he can't feel pain. Right. And in the book, they talk about, they often lose fingers because they might be standing next to a fire and they can't feel it. So, they just completely burn their fingers away. Right.
Mm.
So when you think of pain in that way, pain is a blessing. Right. And as I said, it's a messenger. It's trying to tell you something. So the question is, if you have something like psoriatic arthritis, you need to ask yourself, what is my body trying to tell me? And it either takes, well, I think, you did pretty much your own research really to find out what your message was. But, for anyone listening that might be in a similar situation, I think you've got two choices, is do what Phil did and do your own research. That could take some time maybe. Or you could go to someone like Phil who can speed up the process, right? Because you've been there and you've done that. But I do think it's a very important concept, the concept of the pain teacher. And, in modern day Western world, particularly when you go and see the medical doctor, it's get rid of pain, get rid of pain, get rid of pain at any cost, right? So don't listen to the pain teacher, just get rid of the pain. Rather than, what's the cause of this pain? What's it trying to tell you? What's it trying to teach you, right? So you mentioned you tried Dietary at first, you almost went more vegetarian/vegan. That didn't work. Was there any other things that you tried that didn't work? Michelle, a 44-year-old competitive master swimmer, came to see me due to severe pain in her left shoulder. The shoulder pain was greatly affecting her ability to swim, but she was training through the pain. Michelle had an arthroscopic subacromial decompression surgery, which only temporarily improved the pain, which led her surgeon to suggest that she retires from swimming. Michelle was ranked in the top 2 in her age group in the UK, and her goal was to win the 50 metres butterfly in the European Championships in 3 months' time and the World Championships the following year. Following a thorough assessment, Michelle's initial programs focused on improving her posture and stability, especially around her core and shoulder, as well as a number of nutrition and lifestyle factors, including a fungal cleanse. Michelle stuck to the plan pretty religiously, and 3 months after first coming to see me, Michelle won gold in the 50 metres butterfly in Stockholm at the European Championships in a British record time. And she also went on to win the UK Championships later that year. Not too bad for someone who was advised by her orthopaedic surgeon to stop swimming. So if you have a shoulder injury that's holding you back and you'd like to achieve a great result like Michelle, go to www.bodycheck.co.uk. That's bodychek.co.uk to request your consultation. Now, back to the podcast.
God, hundreds of things. I tried every herb and sort of supplement and everything under the sun. Nothing worked. There were a bunch of things that did work. Well, not a bunch, but cold thermogenesis was quite amazing to get rid of sort of acute inflammation, if you like.
Yeah, cold plunging.
Cold baths, cold showers, rolling around in the snow. I got obsessed with it one winter, and I got really, really adapted to the cold, even though I was very skinny and I loved it. I got fascinated with it. Liver flushing worked. Now that's a bit woo-woo, and a lot of people think it's nuts. And I think if you go fully carnivore, as long as you don't have any existing liver or gallbladder blockages or issues, then that's all you need. But however weird some people say liver flushing is, it definitely did work. From Andreas Moritz's book, The Amazing Liver and Gallbladder Flush. I adapted for Carnivore because I believe that, he was into the whole plant-based thing. And honestly, brilliant as he was, that's probably what killed him at 57 years old, I think. But, the liver flushing, I've seen it really be very effective, particularly for skin issues. Because when the skin being like the third detox organ of the body after the liver and the lungs, a lot of times if the liver's backed up, it can show in the skin. And so, I found that it does seem to do what it says. But do you need that kind of onslaught with Epsom salts and olive oil and God knows what, and then what we call Arsemageddon on the day after, when you have to stay by a toilet. I tell you what, you do not go out on liver flush morning, it's chaos. And so, but it does do some amazing things. I've done about 60 of them now, I think. But I mean, that's over 10 years and I hardly do them anymore. I might do one or two a year sometimes now, if I feel like it at the turn of the season. If I think I might have backed up the liver with anything, I don't know. But not really now. But that I think is a very useful protocol. The fasting was very useful. But again, if you're eating the right things, you don't really need to fast. You just eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. And I only eat like probably 3 times every 2 days. I mean, what are we now? What are we on, about 5 o'clock or something in the afternoon? And I haven't eaten today and I'm not hungry actually yet. But I might eat after this. I might get hungry. I don't know. I've got another call at 7. And so it depends whether the kids get me to cook anything. And if they do, I might eat something. But I'm not actually feeling hungry today. But tomorrow I might stuff my face twice. So I don't know. It's rare that I won't eat for a whole day now, but it's very common I only have one meal.
Yeah.
And so, when you're running on fats and have that much nutrition and no toxins coming in, you get very good absorption of those nutrients and you don't need to eat very often. So I guess people would say that I intermittently fast now, but I don't think of it like that. I just think it's in between meals. When people go, I intermittent fast 16 hours. I go, that's not even the start of a fast. That's like you have your dinner slightly early and then get up and have breakfast. That's not a fast. You're asleep for most of it, for God's sake. So a fast to me begins at a night, a day and a night, I think. That's about it. But fasting is useful. I think fasting was good. That was something that I had. But it is really, really simple. There are a lot of other things, like you could take all that. What did I take? I take all this maca powder and reishi mushrooms and God knows what. So many supplements. And I could have bought a really decent car or even a house. I don't know, with what I've spent on supplements. And they're all nonsense. They're all most of them are full of fillers that still keep the gut leaky. You don't need, if you're trying to heal the gut, you don't want any supplements. There are certain uses for some of them at some times, but not when you're healing. I think your supplement is liver and other organ meats and maybe oysters, small oily fish. Those are your kind of supplements where you're upping certain other nutrients. But, supplements, they're also full of deuterium as well. You don't want that in your body too much. That's a big rabbit hole. Just keep it simple. And when you say this, all you need to do is eat fatty meat, people go, you're mad. Because it sounds too simple. What they don't realize is that I've studied for 40 years and I have to throw out a whole load of old crap to come to that simplicity. I often joke that, during my veggie days, all I needed to do was look at a cave painting. And there's the answer. There's one bloke, one spear, one mammoth. There you go. That's what we ate. There's no broccoli, there's no quinoa, and there's no Beyond Burgers.
Yeah, so just to recap, so fasting, cold baths, cold showers, cutting out plants. Anything else that you did?
Definitely getting the light sorted.
Right.
So that get out in the morning, get the natural light in your eyes to start the whole proper melatonin cortisol cycle. And so that you have melatonin to release in the evenings when you cut the light in your house and you don't have sort of, those awful LED downlighters blaring away. They're just awful, the kind of lighting that people have. in their houses, and it totally destroys their circadian rhythm. It disrupts you hormonally massively. People go, how can it be so important? The whole planet, whatever shape it is, runs on runs on light cycles, doesn't it? Wherever that light is coming from.
Yeah.
But, presuming there is a sun out there and it's not some plasma projection on a firmament, I'm just open to all these things these days. We've been lied to about so much. Who knows? Who knows what it is? But the fact is that whatever produces that light, it changes the seasons, everything. All of nature responds to the changing of the seasons. And if you've got full on artificial light at night, it's going to mess you about. Yeah. Look at the rates of breast cancer among women who work nights. It's huge. And so you can see this, and people say, oh, it can't have any effect. Well, this is how they get battery chickens to lay all around the clock. They keep the strip lights on and it destroys them. But they're hormonally disrupted, so they'll lay, more than they're supposed to lay. And that's disgraceful. People, the vegans say how cruel we are, but we're more against factory farming than anybody else, I think. It's a disgraceful practice. And they're doing that kind of thing, which pretty much proves that the light is very, very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, our hormonal system is tied into sundown and sunrise. You can't debate that. That's just the facts, right?
Yeah, and if you're not sleeping properly, that's the time when you heal, right?
Yeah.
If you're not sleeping properly, however good the input that's coming from food, you're not going to be healing up what you need to heal. So sleep is incredibly important.
Yeah. What about electromagnetic pollution?
Yeah, well, I think that's very important. I'm sitting here next to the phone. I'm sitting here next to the router as well. And the first thing I'll do when I get off this is I'll go outside and ground. Because I get up from calls like this, or if I've spent too long on the computer or whatever, and don't feel that great. I can feel it, and the router always gets turned off at night. We used to hardwire it, but it's very difficult to find ones that you can actually hardwire these days. So it's not so important in the day. I like to go out and ground at regular intervals during the day when I've been on the computer. But if you turn it off at night, that's most of the good that's done.
Yeah.
And all sorts of other things around the house. If you can get, people who turn their whole ring main off upstairs, that's great. EMFs, they're huge. They really are. They're a huge disruptor to the mitochondria.
Yeah. So if someone, let's say someone's suffering at the moment with some kind of psoriatic rheumatoid arthritis, and they're someone that uses their mobile phone a lot. They've always got it near their body. It's always switched on. They bring it up to their ear to speak on the phone. What would you say? What would you say to someone in terms of their healing process if they're using a mobile phone in that way? The other one is they leave it on when they're in a car. And what if they're commuting into a city on a train with hundreds of people in the carriage, all with their mobile phone on?
You're in a Faraday cage, amplifying it all. Yeah.
So that's going to.
I'd say that as far as reversing something, you're probably not going to notice much if you do that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's been part of the cause. Once you've got screaming inflammation with psoriatic arthritis or rheumatoid or whatever, you're not going to notice much by changing your bulbs for red and turning your router off at night. I'll be honest, you won't.
Yeah.
But that's why the diet's so important. That will give you a great difference. But if you do all the other stuff at the same time, then you're cutting out all the things that have contributed to that mitochondrial disruption in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's important to do it all. You get it all done and things work much quicker. The power of carnivore diet, though, of a high-fat carnivore diet, is that loads of people seem to fix things without doing anything else. It really is that powerful. But, you're going to, they say, there's that lovely phrase, isn't there? Trust in God, but tie up your camel. Do as many things as you possibly can, and you'll heal quicker.
Yeah.
So, I think that all of it's incredibly important. Do it all. It doesn't take much. It's not like you have to go and live in a cave. There are ways of tricking your body that you are still in the natural environment. with some very simple changes that don't take up much of your day at all. And that's it. Most important things are subtracting things, not adding. I have an autoimmunity course out there online called the subtraction method, autoimmunity, the subtraction method, to get into people's heads that the most important thing is to subtract things. Like you were saying earlier on, my analogy for it is that, if you're sitting on a drawing pin and you're in pain, don't take an aspirin for the pain. Get off the fucking pin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so obvious that you take away those things, but it's learning what the things are that are actually disrupting you. And a lot of those things are said to be healthy, like your 5 a day, your fiber. How do you ever have a poo without fiber? All of that kind of nonsense, when fiber causes all the problems it's said to cure. All of these myths in the diet world, and then all of this technology that we're given, that we get addicted to, all this artificial blue light. There are ways to sort out your phone. Put it on airplane mode. If I have it next to the bed, I do. But it's on airplane mode. The screen is deep red, very, very dim, so I can just about see the time. And if I wake up in the night and I'm awake for a bit, I'll stay in bed and I'll click on a podcast or something with a 15-minute timer. And I'm usually asleep before that 15 minutes has come back up. But, you can use it in ways that are safe. You don't have to give up all the technology, but just don't overdo it. If you're there at 10 o'clock at night, 1 to midnight, 1 o'clock, whatever it is, with, playing games or watching Netflix or something on a full blue screen, you're going to be in trouble. Your hormonal system is going to be in trouble.
So I guess the next thing that we need to cover in a bit more detail. So let me put this to you. Someone who's vegetarian, right? They've got psoriatic arthritis. They cannot even bear the thought of eating something that was alive, right? Or I should say running around, because obviously plants are alive. Let's say they came to you with psoriatic arthritis, in a lot of pain. What would be your advice to someone in that position?
Well, what I generally get is people who have already discovered about Carnivore. So I have that a bit easier. But if somebody did come to me with that and they were still stuck in that idea, I get people who say, I can't go fully carnivore, I've got too many cravings. That's just, you can help with that with like EFT and stuff. The tapping and whatever, and you can reprogram your beliefs and your pre-programming and stresses and traumas and whatever that have led up to such ridiculous beliefs that our ancestral diet is going to do us some kind of harm, or it's unholy, or it's unspiritual, or it's bad for the environment, or immoral, all these things that people get in their heads. All I can say is that there are an awful lot of people who have been veggie or vegan, and they have not been able to bear the thought of eating animals. I was one of them. And we've come through that, and we've healed, and we've ended up enjoying our food more than we ever did. There can be a weird transition phase, but I would say that you will not heal if you carry on eating like that. There's no way around it. You're not going to heal the gut. If the gut's already leaky and you're still piling in plant toxins, the gut's not going to heal. So, I'll say what Anton Chafee said when we were in Spain, and somebody said, well, I can't eat liver, I can't. And he just went, I tell you what, grow up. And I loved that. And he said it with great compassion. We were there live, it wasn't online or anything. And the person just laughed, because there's ways around that, people who won't take liver and they freeze little bits of it and swallow it like a pill and whatever. But, you get used to it. It's all right. Not as good as a fat steak, but it's all right. But and there's all these levels to things where people have gone, ooh, I can't eat that. Listen, just grow up, seriously. And it's going to save your life. Look into what we are actually adapted to eat as a species. Look into all the people who have healed through doing this and the people who failed from not doing that. You are going to need to cut all those plants out of your diet. And what is left? What are you going to eat? You're not going to become a breatharian. It doesn't work that way. We all go that way. We get really ill from eating all these grains and pulses and that kind of thing. And then there's that vegan progression, isn't it? I like to call it end stage veganism, where you end up sort of fasting extensively. You end up doing urine fasts. I mean, anything like that. And then finally you figure out you've got to eat some meat. And you do it and you heal. And then the vegans go, oh, well, it was only because you fasted for too long and drank your own piss. No, that's the state that you get into when you're at so much desperation that you end up doing those kind of things. It's not that wasn't what caused the problem in the first place. I mean, nobody goes vegan and they go, oh, do you know what? I think I won't eat for 30 days, but what I will do is drink my own piss. No, that isn't veganism, right? That's desperation. That's absolute desperation. And just don't try not to get to that stage. You know, I mean, you probably eat veggie burgers and stuff if you're one of those people, and really that's trying to imitate meat. Just believe me that proper burgers taste a lot better, and a steak tastes a lot better than anything that you'll have from the plant kingdom. And so just you're going to have to work with that. You're going to have to really look into it, really understand anthropology, look at what tribes actually eat, people who really are in touch with nature. There are no vegetarian and vegan tribes, and they're much more connected to nature and have much more respect for it than any vegan sitting in a high-rise block of flats eating Beyond Burgers, you know. They're totally disconnected from nature. Understand that it is not cruel, it's not unspiritual. Look in the texts of Ayurveda, you know, and see that the things that I missed when I was writing about Ayurveda, you know, in the Charak Samhita, the Bhava Prakash, where they're saying that meat is the most nourishing food for the body. It's a life-giving energy, like nectar, like Amrit, you know. And these things are missed by the people who think it's all about eating rice and dal and taking Ayurvedic medicines. It's the same kind of thing, really, because they want to push the Ayurvedic medicines, which are often full of heavy metals and they're made up with cow shit and all kinds, you know. It's not really very good stuff. There's some very good theories in it, but in practice now, in the modern version of it, it's pretty much rubbish. And you know, they got the circadian thing together, though. I like that. You know, they do understand about that. But I think you've got to get out of that. You really have to get out of that. And I've seen people do it, and it depends how desperate you are. It's the pain teacher again, isn't it? You know, it depends how desperate you are. If you're in screaming pain, it's when vegans go, however sick I was, I'd never eat meat. All right, you just wait. I've seen it happen. When they get that sick, eventually they eat meat. You know, people have come to me for help who have attacked me on my YouTube channel. Even some people have sent death threats and stuff. They go crazy, you know, vegans. And then after a while, their thyroid's gone wrong, their joints have seized up, their arse has exploded, something's gone wrong. You know, the teeth are falling out, something's happened that wakes them up. And they say, you know, it's time for a change.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a lot of sympathy for people that are in that situation. And again, people I know who are vegetarian and they say, "Oh, I'm an animal lover. I'm an animal lover. I couldn't do it. I completely understand that. The other, I guess, group of people that are in a similar situation is people that are following a particular religious belief that, you know, they should only eat plant-based foods. Would you approach someone in that situation in a different way, or would it just be exactly the same?
I would say that we've been led into a lot of tremendously harmful things by religion and spirituality. And I think it's very disrespectful to all of our ancestors who have all eaten a very heavily meat-based diet to say that there was nobody in those tribes or civilizations that was spiritual. There was nobody who, you know, these great shamans, these wise men, there's whoever it is, who has seen through that beautiful veil that we are all one and we're all connected. You know, that is not dependent on starving yourself. In fact, it's you know, if you look at the chakra system, if it actually exists, you know, why don't we bolster up the lower chakras too? I mean, when I see people who are veggie and spiritual for many years, they end up very airy-fairy, very weak, very easily upset, as well as their bodies, you know, just giving up. I've lost so many veggie and vegan friends up here to cancer, autoimmunity, whatever, as we hit our 50s, 60s, and 70s. They're very ill. I have I think if anybody is thinking like that, I've got 3 videos on my YouTube channel. One called Carnivore Diet and Spirituality, one called Carnivore Diet and Ahimsa, Non-Violence. But one is a bit longer. It's about 40 minutes, I think. But it's a real plea to my friends in the TM movement or anybody else in the spiritual movement. And I think it's called Diet Brainwashing, Why Spiritual People Still Get Cancer or Die of Cancer or something like that. But I really go into it because I got really upset after a while. I just lost so many. And people go, oh, well, it's the meat that's causing all these modern chronic diseases. No, it isn't. It's all the plant toxins. And any studies done on meat eaters, they count meat as a bit of pepperoni on the top of a pizza, right? No studies are being done on people who are actually on their ancestral diet.
Yeah.
And they blame it on the meat. So you go into McDonald's, right? You got a burger patty, then in a bun, which is seeds and grains and all sorts of other additives. You've got the fries, which, they've glycoalkaloid anyway, potatoes. And then it's got a whole load of different ingredients, including being fried in seed oils. You've got your jumbo Coca-Cola and whatever, and you're blaming the problems of the modern world on that burger patty.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And so we've been brainwashed into thinking that meat causes cancer and causes heart disease and all of that. It doesn't. It's, ancient foods do not cause modern diseases. That's it.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned about, people who were vegan, vegetarian, losing them to cancer. It was interesting. I had someone on the show, I think it was sometime last year, and she asked to come on, and I thought, well, she's got quite an inspiring story. She'd been through cancer. And I didn't realize this, beforehand, but during the show, it turns out she'd been a vegetarian, I think, for like 20 years. And she went down the normal medical route of treatment. And I didn't realize she was actually very recently had that treatment. And she was trying to lecture me. Now, I'm about 10 years older than her. She was trying to lecture me that if I don't stop eating red meat, I'm going to get cancer. And I'm thinking, but I've probably been eating it 54, 55 years at that point. And I'm perfectly healthy. Yet she'd been vegetarian and got cancer and was telling me that red meat causes cancer. And it's the only time ever on my podcast that I've actually argued with someone, because I'm not the kind of person to argue with anybody. But when she started saying red meat causes cancer, I just thought, well, hang on a minute. I can't have someone saying that on my podcast and me not, calling it out, right? Because, like you said, all these studies that supposedly show that red meat causes cancer, there's so many confounding factors of all the other stuff that you've mentioned that are probably causing far more of the issue, right? So yeah, it's interesting. One of the things you talk about as well in your book, and this is something that, again, I'm really interested in, and it forms a part of my work as well. And it's more the, so you mentioned that the main thing is nutrition, but you also mention in your book more the esoterical kind of causes of conditions. Do you want to go into that? Talk about that a little bit? So in your book, you talk about your knee pain particularly.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's even that diet is the main thing. I think the sort of subtler things are the main thing. But once you're in that trouble, it's not going to do much straight away. There are some people who say that, they suddenly get remission of everything, with these various techniques, and maybe some of them do. But again, trust in God, but tie up your camel. I think that, there are certain books that have been written on it that are very useful, like Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life. That's an old classic. My favorite is Inna Seagal. She wrote a book called, what's it called? The Secret Language of Your Body.
Yeah, I've got that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a very useful reference book. It's nothing you ever need to read, but if there's something wrong with a certain part of the body, if I do a consult and I talk to somebody about their sort of emotional issues and whatever, and it's often very much ties in with their physical symptom, very much. Yeah. Knees with me, it's difficult. I still have it. That's why it got so damaged, I think. The sort of moving forward in your life. I still have that aspect. I'm 62 years old, and I still have that aspect of, what am I going to do when I grow up? And it's becoming a bit more clear now, but that kind of moving forward in life, trying to do the things that give me passion, like playing drums, being a carnivore influencer, helping people to heal. It's not very financially rewarding. It's very difficult to monetize these things when you can't sell a load of supplements. But when you have integrity, people don't need those things.
Yeah.
It's very simple to tell them what to do. And it's funny, I love it when vegans come along and go, oh, you're only in it for the money. You've got a book. I mean, what do I earn out of that book? I'm amazed it still sells, probably by the clickbaity title. It was a Kindle bestseller for a little while. Still, I didn't get much from it. Now, on a good month, I might get £100 from that book.
Yeah.
That doesn't go very far, right?
Yeah.
And so you're only in it for the money. And so I made this video, I'm killing people with my carnivore diet lies. I'm a chill for the meat industry, they say. What is this meat industry? Where's my Ferrari out the back for pushing these lies and killing people? It's funny, so that for me has been an issue, and that moving forward in life, which is generally associated with the knees. I remember an issue when I wasn't getting on with my mum, very difficult. And we finally moved out. I was looking after her after my dad died. We were in the same house. And I thought I can still look after her if we're not. So we got in two different places. My ankles healed up, and they did heal up straight away because that issue was gone. And that was with no change in diet. And that was kind of miraculous. And the ankles associated with look for something that you're trying not to run away from. Which was an interesting one because I was staying around out of duty and whatever. I mean, in Thai, we looked after her after that. I didn't abandon her or anything. I put her in a home. I couldn't do that. So she was just in a different place. And I mean, even after that, you can see a video on my YouTube channel of her breast cancer reversing on a carnivore diet, with a bit of iodine thrown in as well. And so I think the emotional side of things is very important when. I think it's a blessing, again, something like arthritis. That's a very cool ailment because, number one, it's so painful. You've got to pay attention to it. Number two, it can hit anywhere. And so you can use that as like a roadmap of your emotions and what needs to be figured out. And I think that's great because then, you can take the symptoms right down. So you're no longer in screaming agony. You can take the symptoms right down with, a good carnivore diet. But then I've found that there are certain joints that were affected and are not affected anymore because I've sorted out emotional issues. Even if I do eat something wrong and I get a flare of something, those joints are never involved anymore, which I think is fascinating. But joints that do tally with emotional issues or sort of things that I still have to work on. And I think, I've unwound a load of traumas and emotional issues from looking at things from having arthritis in various places and then tracing it back, detective style. But yeah, the knee thing is still there, which I think is why I took some damage in the knee, because it's taken me a while. My problem is cash flow, money, monetizing things, being responsible enough to figure out how to actually get things moving without just answering free messages all day. I get so many free messages, inquiries, stuff on my carnivore groups, and I do 98% of what I do is for free. And I can't stop that. People go, you've got to stop doing that and put it into energies of monetizing things. But then you get a message with somebody in terrible pain. You go, oh no, I've got, my heart goes out to them. And so I'll figure out a way around that. I think I'm actually quite close, particularly with doing these events. They're starting to make a little bit of money and they're so wonderful to go to. They're brilliant events. I think I put on the best events.
Awesome. So just going back to someone that got arthritis, whether they're vegetarian or omnivore, I guess it doesn't matter, but they come to you. Are there certain things that you might say, maybe start with this? So it might be, right, these are the worst plants, so let's take them out. Or these are maybe, if you're not used to eating meat, these might be some of the best things to introduce first. Is there anything along those lines that you advise people?
No. What I do, it sounds sort of militant, but it's not. It's actually the other way. I just say to people, really research and understand what different foods do. And then you decide for yourself what's going to fix this. I say that really, I think Anthony Chaffee's right on this, that the 95% of the benefits come when you drop the last 5% of the plants, particularly when you're healing up. So it's up to them. They say, what about this? And I say, well, what about coffee? For example, people always say that. And I go, well, it's up to you. I'll tell you that it is a neurotoxin. It's a very addictive substance that messes about with all kinds of pathways, but you've got, acrylamides in there. You've got very nasty neurotoxins, and it's not the benign thing that people think it is. You want to drink coffee? There you go. You've been equipped with the knowledge of that. Do you want to try to do it? I say, instead of getting people to give up one thing at a time or whatever, like I did and wasted 3 years, I say, go fully carnivore, high fat, 30 days. You tell me after those 30 days you're not getting somewhere. And then, do what you like. But do what you like in the 30 days anyway. I can just give you that advice, that the best thing to do is to go totally strict, 30 days, actually more like 90 if you are already sick and you have an issue. That's when the magic starts coming in, I think, around the sort of 3-month mark. But then really, go, if you can, go symptom free for a few months before you try reintroducing things one at a time if you want. But then I do tend to find that people have lost a load of those cravings and they don't want to reintroduce them. At the beginning of those 30 days, how can I live without this? How can I live without that? The cravings tend to die down.
Yeah, interesting. One of the sayings that I have, that I use a lot, I learned it from a NLP practitioner many, many years ago. And it's that there's no such thing as failure, only feedback.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, like pain is a teacher, your symptoms are also a teacher. So if, let's say, someone went carnivore for 30 days and they noticed that their symptoms were reducing, let's say, there's some feedback, right? And then, let's say you reintroduce something, or let's say, I don't know, you went to a wedding at the weekend and you had a normal meal and you had cake and alcohol and you were in pain for the next week. There's your feedback, right? It doesn't mean you failed because you've learned something, So I often get clients to fill out diet sheets, and they have to not just write down what they've eaten, but how they've responded to that meal. So in terms of, their emotions, their satiety, whether they've got cravings, their energy levels. And it is quite interesting. I kind of chuckle to myself sometimes, because most of the time, most of my clients, it's like they've handed in their homework at school, right? And if all their reactions haven't been ideal, they feel like teacher's going to tell them off. Right? But it's not that kind of relationship. It's an adult to adult relationship, right? We're equals. We're not, teacher and student. Doesn't work like that. And all I'm there to do is to help people work out what works for them, right? Which is pretty much what you were saying, right? You want coffee?
Yes, to give people back the power. So for too long we've been putting people in white coats on pedestals. They're the ones who are going to heal us, and they're not. We've got to take back responsibility for our own health in these chronic conditions. If you've broken your leg and you've got a bone sticking out, then you need help from somebody. But if you've got rheumatoid arthritis or something, you don't need help from any of that medical system, and you need to understand how to do this yourself. So for me, I send them a load of links. I like to send them inspiring podcasts. I think people should all listen to Anthony Chaffee's "Plants Are Trying to Kill You" video. Because some people go, oh yeah, there's plant toxins. They don't really matter. If you really understand what's in those damn things, you're going to think twice about eating them. And to understand that there is everything we need in meat. Nothing's going to happen. You're not going to get backed up for. I've been doing it 9 years now, and believe me, I have had a poo in 9 years. People go, how do you do that? Yeah, I have the best digestion and elimination ever. And, I was on Sean Baker's podcast and we were chatting about this and chatting about poo, as carnivores do quite often. And I said that, I've got my turds could be on the cover of the Bristol Stool Chart Glamour Calendar. They're perfect. I want to wake up the missus and go, check it out. Check out this crowd pleaser. I've said this on so many podcasts now, but it does hit home that, when I used to be veggie and blasting the toilet, 6 times a day, it's a great relief to actually have proper digestion and predictable elimination now. And when I go out, I don't need to keep looking out for a toilet. I have perfect control over my arse these days. And there's no problem. There's no inflammation. There's no bloating. There's nothing. I mean, a friend of mine said the one bad thing about carnivore is you don't fart anymore because, he used to enjoy lighting his farts and stuff like that. You don't get that pleasure anymore. So at least that's one downside anyway. No, isn't that an upside? I mean, I remember a fart all the time as a vegetarian, and that's your gut trying to tell you something initially. Yeah. It's not supposed to happen like that. So, yeah, there's to tell people about it, to give them the actual knowledge of what's going on and then let them make up their mind. Because if you're telling them what to do day to day, they might not understand why. But also, I think support and groups, and often seeing people who are like a month down the line is more inspiring than seeing somebody like me who's 9 years down the line. Yeah. Right. So I do a group Zoom thing. I've got one this evening, actually in a little while. This my call this evening, if I can get on it, if I can figure out how to use Zoom on the damn phone, because the computer's blown up. I just started enjoying this chat and forgot that my computer's blown up. Anyway, if I can get on that call, but to have group support, once a week or whatever, because if people ask questions, you think, well, how am I going to talk about this every week with people? But the same questions come up, or weird questions, or questions that didn't quite get in the first time, and let them ask the questions, let them be inspired about from people who are a month or two down the line or 6 months down the line and see what's happened. Because I don't remember some of the things that happened in the first month or two, it was a long time ago. And then you see the typical things that happen, like in the transition phase where people think they're bunged up, or they might get the runs for a bit. They might get an electrolyte issue. They might have an oxalate dumping thing going on. To get people over those initial teething problems, which can set them back. Yeah. They go, oh my God, I got terrible palpitations. The carnivore diet is evil. I had to give it up and go back to carbs. Now I'm all right again. No, the body has been damaged for so long, and it's got protective systems in place, like in the microbiome, if you like, to protect you against the things you're eating. People go, we need a very diverse microbiome. No, you don't. You need a diverse microbiome to protect you against the crap that you were eating before. It doesn't mean to say you need to eat more things. You just need to get rid of those defense systems. If it's not raining, you don't need a raincoat. Right? Yeah. It's the same with the gut. Nobody understands the microbiome. If they say they do, they're lying. And so, it's to get people to understand these things and get rid of all the brainwashing that's happened. And then they can start to see the clear way forward without having any doubts. Because if you're looking at all these diet gurus, there's so much conflicting information, isn't there? There's so much out there that confuses people. I remember it. But then I say to people, I tell you what, just study anthropology, study plant toxins, and study deuterium. And then you tell me what you should eat. Ignore the diet gurus.
Yeah. It's interesting talking about bowel movements. It's a very important subject when it comes to health. And for the first 30 years of my life, I have shared this before in the podcast, but I'm going to say it again. I had a bowel movement every day, but let's just say it was hard to pass. It took about half an hour. And if anyone followed me into the toilet, they would need a machete to get through the atmosphere. Right. And I didn't know any different. So I thought that was normal. Right. So I would say that I ate a standard English diet. Right. So, rubbish. I mean, there was some good stuff in there, but there was some rubbish as well. Right. Then in the year 2000, I completely switched my diet, and I probably went to somewhere between 80 to 90% animal-based, about 10 to 20% plant-based. And literally within 24 hours, my bowel movements changed like that. They were easy to pass. They didn't smell. They weren't dark in color, i.e. they weren't toxic. And it's been that way ever since. What would most people say? Oh, if you don't get enough vegetables, you'll be constipated. Well, actually, when I cut down my vegetables, my bowel movements improved.
Yeah, well, there's that study out there, isn't there, on PubMed? You can look it up. Stopping or reducing dietary fiber reverses constipation or something, idiopathic constipation. They had 64 people, I think it was, and they took all the fiber out of their diet, constipated people, and they probably thought they were going to kill them or they're going to blow up or something. But it wasn't like a small result, like a few people were better or whatever. They were all loads better. Some completely reversed it. They were all tons better. And the sort of embarrassed summary at the end said, we're going to have to completely reevaluate the role of fiber in the diet. And that's a study that all we carnivores like to point people to, because I think it's the only one that's actually been done on it. But it's something that we all know. Digestion and elimination becomes very, very easy.
Yeah, interesting. So my only experience I've ever had of being a vegetarian was on a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat, right? And my own experience was, in 10 days, I lost 8 kilos. And my tummy was about 5 inches bigger than when I went in. Right? And on the final day, because during, for those who don't know, it's a silent retreat, so you can't speak for 10 days. The males and females are split as well, so you're not even in the same vicinity. And then on the final day, before you go home, they allow you to mingle and to talk, and you're allowed to mix between male and female. And I remember I was talking to the 2 ladies, and I said, I couldn't believe it. Like, when I went into the toilets, every time it sounded like an band was playing, right? It was horrendous. I'd never heard anything like it. And without being too graphical, the toilet bowls were disgusting if you followed someone in there, and the smell was horrendous. And these 2 women went, yep, same in the women's. And I was like, wow. It was just incredible.
It was funny. We had this retreat recently, and then there was pics of it coming up. People were sharing it all over social media because it was so great. And a couple of trolls came up underneath, the vegans find it, and they go, oh God, I'd hate to have been in the toilets after that on a carnivore conference. And I thought, you have no idea, guys. It's just completely the opposite. It's so funny.
Yeah. Interesting. Phil, this has been great talking to you. I know you've got something else coming up, so I'm not going to keep you too much longer, but I just want to reiterate, this book, I know it hasn't made you a millionaire, but I know only too well you don't make a lot of money from books. But I really highly recommend anyone who is suffering from any kind of arthritis or even any kind of autoimmune condition, highly recommend that book. It's really, really great. And it's quite an entertaining read as well. I really enjoyed reading it. So before we wrap up, have you got any wise words for the audience?
Not really. Just take back your own power with health, really, and have confidence that you don't have to go through some kind of university course to be a serious expert in this field. It's not difficult. It's not rocket science. It's just getting rid of the beliefs that you've been given, and have a really open mind, because you're going to find out that a lot of the things that you thought were true are just nonsense. I love, one of my favorite quotes is from Ram Tzu, who was that's his kind of spiritually name. He was sort of a non-dual teacher, but I loved it on his talks. And he used to put up, if he was doing a talk, bring me your dearest held beliefs, and with any luck, you'll leave without them. And I loved that. And I think have that kind of an open mind when it comes to healing diet, because let this sink in, right? Pfizer have been going for 140 years, is it? Something ridiculous like that. They have never cured a single disease. If you let that really sink in, walk away from the medical system. I'm really sad today because there's a friend of mine and he's in trouble, and he's been pulled into the medical system because of cancer. And it's pretty serious at the moment. And then I saw that he'd been going for radiotherapy. And I said, I'm heartbroken. And I really tried. And I don't normally get in these situations, but it was just before this call. And he sent me a message. He's really upset with me. He really is. I've really upset him. I thought I might. And it's very difficult with cancer because they put the fear mongering into you. But I see him going down the tubes, and I thought my message might well upset him. And I'm very sad, and I have. And he probably will never speak to me again. And it's very sad, but you've got to try sometimes. But you got to know when to pull away. And it was actually my message saying, "I'm pulling away. I really tried. I'm here, but I am heartbroken. You've done that." And I could have put you in touch with the best people in the world. And it's a sad one because it was right before this call.
Yeah.
I was doing that and fighting with the computer and doing that at the same time. In fact, that was the last message I sent on the computer as it blew up. It froze in the middle of a message to him, and I had to carry it on the phone. And it was fun. That was weird, actually, thinking about that. Why was that? That's interesting. I get my woo-woo hat on and think about that. But it was, it's sad. Sometimes you have to let go. And people get very upset with you, particularly when it comes to cancer. But I think you just need to have a really open mind and just see the results. Be realistic about the results these people are having, the medical system's having, and walk away. If you've got rheumatoid arthritis or whatever, you're in pain, you are not going to die tomorrow, right? You have time to figure this out. Don't let them freak you out about you're going to get joint damage if you don't take up pills and whatever, all this kind of crap. Walk away, take your time, compose yourself. You made some mistakes in the past, but you're going to come through it even better. You're going to come out the other side. And that is a different message than the medical system give you of it's all doom and gloom, it's incurable, diet doesn't work, you've got to take up pills. That's going to depress anybody. I like it when people come on a consult with me and they come on and they're miserable and they go away smiling and we're laughing by the end of the consult. And they've got hope, they've got positivity, because that's what you need. And look at all the other healing stories out there and understand how powerful this is. For all the people that complain and say this is dangerous, this is whatever, look at all the carnivore vids out there now. My channel, Ken Carnivore, Lee's channel, your channel. I mean, anybody's, Anthony's and Sean's and Ken Berry's. Look at the comments underneath of all before people go and think. It amazes me that people go in and attack now, because there's hundreds of healing stories under each video, every video, and they go in going, "This is disgusting. Meat's going to kill you." Look, please wake up. Look at all those other things. Are all these bots? Are they all lying? No, they're not. This is the truth coming out. So get confidence. That's what I'd say. Confidence is the most important thing, and get support.
I know there was a study a while back, and it showed that people were they were less, so they were given a choice of change your diet and live, or keep your current diet and die. And most people chose to keep their current diet.
Yeah.
Right. Which, I guess you could also say potentially that's the same with people's beliefs as well, right? People would rather keep their belief and die than change their belief and live a healthy, happy, long life.
Yeah. Well, every disease is curable, just not every patient.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it depends on your attitude, your commitment, how strong the pain teacher is. Yeah,
absolutely. And what's next for you, Phil?
Well, I want to get my Red Pill Buddhist podcast up and running again, because I let that slide for a bit. And we've got our Spain conference coming up next year, which is going to sell out pretty quick. And it just, carnivorespain.com, check it out. The speakers are amazing. We've got Anthony Chaffee, we've got Sophia Clements from Paleo Medicina. We've got Mary Ruddick, who travels around all the indigenous tribes. We've got Dr. Sarah Pugh on all the quantum stuff, who is just, I love Sarah. She's wonderful. And we've got Sean Baker now as well. So we got kind of almost a full house. And we got Richard Smith, who is amazing, from the UK, Keto Pro. He's coming back to talk again. But anyway, it's just hanging out in paradise for a while. I love doing these events. We've got one coming up in Lancashire in August as well, our Ancestral Health Festival.
I'm normally there in August.
Excellent. Well, come along, man. I also do the music. We got the Daz band playing. We'll have other music there, so it's a whole thing. Cooking all the food on the fire pits outside and whatever. And we got natural movement stuff, breath work, all kinds of things going on at that one. Very informal, lots of fun, camping, whatever. More of a festival vibe. And doing that, all kinds of other stuff. We got loads and loads of plans. But if anybody wants to keep up with that, I would say please just put my name into Substack or whatever. That's where I use it as a mailing list and keep updated on all the events that we got going on. I got philescott.com and whatever for booking consults, but or my link tree or Substack. But you put me in and find the Substack, sign up for free, and I don't spam anybody. I don't do too much, but you get updated on everything, and there's some nice stuff in there, and I'll be running the podcast through there as well soon. And I'm going to have to get you on there as well, Lee. I want to hear more about your story.
Absolutely. Cool. Yeah, definitely. And obviously they can get your book from all the major online bookstores.
Well, it's just on the evil New World Order Amazon at the moment. But it's there. Okay. And it's, available in Kindle or in print, but it is on Amazon. And hope you enjoy it.
Great. Excellent. Phil, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I've enjoyed talking to you just as much as I read in your book. So, thanks again for your time.
I've enjoyed it too. Thank you, Lee. Thanks very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. So that's all from Phil and me for this week. But don't forget to join me, same time, same place, next week on the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to give the show a rating and a review, and I'll see you next time.